Welcome back to the newspaper review. We are joined this morning with our guest, Gbolahan Olojede. He is a public affairs analyst. Thank you for joining us on the newspaper review.
Yeah, good morning. Nice to be on the program.
All right, let's talk about the reopening of the Lekki toll gates. We know that since October 2020, October 20th, 2020, there's been that pause on what has happened. There's been that quietness right now. And a lot of Nigerians are very, very careful to talk about the events that led to the closing of the Lekki Toll Plaza. But for April 1st had been announced long before today that the plaza will be opened. And the Lagos State government has told us that there's going to be a 10-day review, before the opening of the gates. How do you see the Lekki reopening? The residents, of course, have complained, but as a Lagosian who gets to use that plaza from time to time with the Ikoyi Link Bridge as well, what do you make of this particular report?
Okay. For a background, that toll gate became operational in 2011. So it has been there for about 8 years or 9 years before the EndSARS protest. And right from 2011, there had been, there had even been litigations about the tolling. So why I think that background is important is to be able to set the background that this is not about EndSARS. The current resistance being faced it's not about EndSARS, because there had always been issues about people who do not want that tolling, residents who do not want that tolling to happen in the first instance. However, when EndSARS happened and the gate was shut down, the tolling was stopped, there was a new breath of air. So when you get to that toll gate, no traffic, even at peak periods. Everybody just drives through. So the traffic that we often face during peak period disappeared. Number two is the fact that nobody had to dip his hand in the pocket again and pay the toll. So these two incidences, these two factors, you're not paying any longer, and then you don't have to wait. You just drive through, are things that people have got used to over the last 1.5 years. So definitely there is bound to be some resistance, primarily based on those two factors, and also because there have been agitators anyway, even right from 2011 when the toll gate was there. But the reality, in my opinion, is that if there are obligations that are tied to that toll gate, to those toll gates, which means if we have taken private people's money and invested, for example, I'm aware that at some point AFC invested in that Ikoyi Link Bridge. So when you collect their money and you say, look, I will repay you back from the toll that I will be getting from this toll gate, if you cut off that toll, it becomes a breach of contract that will affect future interest of these financiers in your project. And the reality is that there is no government anywhere in the world that can meet the infrastructure demands of its citizens without private participation. So we will always need private people to bring money into this transaction. Where there are obligations that have been created, we need to pay them. If we promise we're going to toll and pay them from the toll, let us be able to toll and pay them from those tolls. Now,
talking about obligations, it would be nice to have this clarity passed across to both the Lekki residents and the motorists, because that toll is not only about the Lekki residents. Now, it's about every road user in Lagos State, because whether it's your route or not, one day you find yourself driving along that path. And even if it's your first time, you won't tell them at the toll that it's my first time. Can I be exempted? Yes. So now, how can this information be passed them? Because there's a 30-year term of agreement clause now that the concession company has, before it is now handed over to Lagos State as their own. So how do we let people understand? Because as we have seen this, let's not forget that some people have not resumed their work. They had staff who are, Lagosians, Nigerians there. So as I speak to you, some people have not been to work for how long now? And these are people that are hit by this. So how do we let people understand that as much as the toll gate has been closed, some Nigerians are affected, our economy is affected too, you know, somehow. But about the traffic, I must say, if there's a technology that can avert traffic any which way around that area, it will be much welcomed, I must tell you. But how do Lagosians get to understand the part of the government, the part of the company, and their own role in the payments of Lekki toll?
You see, right from the beginning is where I think we missed it a little bit. I don't think the engagement at the onset was robust enough, and I don't think that the transparency that was put on the table was fair enough at the beginning. And these things have a way of affecting PPPs, not just in Nigeria. Everywhere there are PPPs across the world, if you don't put the right level of transparency on the table, you face resistance. And it has led to several failures of PPPs across the world. So at this junction that we are right now, it is still the duty of governments to continue. And I know they've started some engagement. I was listening to the news yesterday, so I heard something about engaging the Lekki Resident Association and other stakeholders and the rest of Lagosians. There are other stakeholders, you know. So that has to be sustained. Even if they start now, if we open the toll gate and we start working out, that discussion must still be sustained because there is room for improvement. You just mentioned something now. You said that traffic issue, if there's something we can do, maybe there is. And it is in the course of sustained discussion that we can probably come up with certain solutions that will help with reducing the traffic burden that will be created by the toll. I used to work somewhere on Admiralty Road, so I use the Ikoyi Link Bridge every day, sometimes several times during the day. And it is my movement, but at the same time, I didn't enjoy the payment, you know. So if in the evenings when we're coming, you see the traffic, because everybody leaves their offices around the same time, and we are at that toll gate about the same time. So there's traffic. At some point, I remember that they had some people who walk into the crowd holding POSs, and they start to collect the toll from there. What that does is that it automatically increases the number of pay points from the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gates that are there to as many as POS holders that are also collecting the payment, and it makes it faster. So whatever we can do in terms of arrangement, in terms of technology to ease the traffic, let's be able to do that.
Yeah, about arrangements, there are alternative routes. I know for the Lekki-Epe Expressway, the one on Lekki-Epe, there are alternative routes. Even though those alternative routes can be can have its own, yeah, it can be better. But because the bottleneck there, if everybody is facing the alternative routes, is another level of traffic. But now I want us to move a bit away from that and get into another infrastructural matter. COVID-19, Russian-Ukraine war stalling Ajaokuta steel projects. This is coming from the federal government. Now, the federal government said they could no longer complete the Ajaokuta steel rolling mill in 2022 due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russian-Ukraine war. This particular headline, did you see it coming immediately the pandemic started? Nobody saw the war coming, but did you even see this coming when the pandemic started at first, before we get into the Russian-Ukraine war?
Well, I think we have played too much politics with Ajaokuta. And the reason is clear. Anybody who has been to Ajaokuta before will understand the immensity of what we have in that place. It is a humongous facility, and you can begin to imagine the investment that has gone into Ajaokuta. There was even a minister that cried when she visited that facility before. And it is the same emotions that the facility will arouse in anybody that goes there. But my question is, have we been dealing with Ajaokuta from an emotional perspective as opposed to from a pragmatic business decision perspective? So look at the issue of saying Ukraine war. Russia war started just about a month ago. It couldn't be the reason why for 7 years nothing has happened in Ajaokuta. So let's forget about Ukraine war. COVID happened, that's fine. It happened, and there was a certain problem for about 7 months. After that, people have gone back to their lives. Train tracks have been completed. The Lagos-Ibadan was launched. Lagos-Ibadan Rail was launched in 2001, I think middle of 2000. So people have gone back to work. It is not the whole truth. It might be partially so, but that is not the whole truth. The whole truth is that we must be able to do an independent assessment of Ajaokuta.
Okay.
And then cut off the sentiment and make a decision. Maybe we just need to exit that facility rather than keep deceiving ourselves that we can revive it. Maybe the government needs to cut its losses, lick its wound, exit that transaction, and move on. Let the private sector take it over from where it is.
Let me put in here, just because of our time. So, two questions in one. What would Nigerians benefit if this steel company becomes a completed project at the end of the day? And personally, I've asked myself, are we the only ones that the war is affecting so closely? I just wanted to put it out there. Let's understand clearly what's happening, what's the connection between the war, the steel, and then how it's going to help our economy if it eventually becomes a reality.
Steel is very important to manufacturing. You want to do cars, you want to do buckets, you want to build, in the construction industry, almost in several industries, we need steel. So it would definitely help our industrialization. It will create jobs. There is also a lot of integration that are involved. You have the Itakpe steel mill. You have all the other things that are joined to that Ajaokuta. That would have made a very comprehensive business case and employment for this country. So that is not in doubt. What is in doubt is whether a technology that was installed about 2-3 decades ago, and it was installed obsolete. As at day one, when the technology was installed, it was obsolete. Is that the technology that could make us competitive in the world of steel today? By the time we say we decide to complete it, will the steel that will come out of Ajaokuta as it is today, will that steel be competitive? Or it will come out at 100 naira, when if I import that same steel, I will get it for 60 naira. Oh my.
You just brought up a conversation that has taken my mind to another dimension, the 21st century usefulness of, of what is going to come out of that. But because of that, because of our time, I'll take a pause on this, and we'll probably have a conversation on this on some other discussion. I'd like to just end it here now. Thank you so much for joining us on the newspaper review this morning, Mr. Gbola Olojede.
The pleasure is mine. Have a wonderful day.
You too.